Canada is one of the major international investors in African mining. Its investments in African mining, in fact, increased tenfold in the first decade of the 2000s. So the Insight Grant looks at the experience of Canadian miners in Africa in the 2000s and in the context of Canadian mining law reform. Canadian innovations in the 2010s, the Extractor Sector Transparency Measures Act and the Canadian Ombudsman for Responsible Enterprise have attempted to come to terms with the rising role of Canadian miners in Africa and encourage them in ways which would improve the relations with local hosts, which would boost the developmental outcomes in terms of skills, training, transfer of skills and technology, and better corporate social responsibility overall. So we're looking in the Insight Grant at large, medium, and small-scale miners and the various ways in which the new Canadian regulations have encouraged and elicited better behavior, but also ways in which the Canadian measures have enabled host countries, host communities, and local businesses to demand and receive better deals, better share of revenues, and a bigger piece of local content and provisions, procurement from Canadians. The Insight Grant research over the next 3 years will hopefully contribute in a number of different ways. First, obviously, to this growing literature on mining policy reform. The second aspect of the research is looking at the dynamics of policy engagement, not in Canada, but in host countries. So both in Africa and in Canada, the results of this research will not just be relayed into the academic realm, literature and debates, but also there are provisions in this grant, in this project, for feedback policy loops into the Canadian government, into Canadian mining interests, and into African mining interests at national and regional level in Africa. In Southern and Eastern Africa's mineral-rich countries, there's been a real wave in the last 10, 15 years of resource nationalism pushed from below as people have realized that in the commodities boom, where mineral prices have gone up, the local benefits have been minimal. So this has led to a political response. The second project, therefore, looks at the emergence of resource nationalism politics in 3 different mineral-rich countries and charts how although a similar language and similar politics has emerged, why we see different kinds of policy outcomes. The focus is more on building research capacity and policy engagement with local governments and with continental mining regimes through the African Mining Vision. And it's about building new young scholars and their capacity and in their engagement with research, but also with policymaking processes. So I'm quite excited about that project as well.